So we took the time to build the prompt here. This is the exact prompt that we use. And you see that we're generating characters in a consistent style with about a 10-15% sort of wiggle room for consistency. And then because it's a template, all we have to do is change 5 or 6 words, and then we have another character who looks a little different but is in a consistent art style. We can elaborate on that. We can add things like glasses or a flower in the lapel, and we can even consistently dress and pose characters, which is really, really powerful. We can then take that, hand it over to our illustration or animation teams, and we're in production. But of course, we're not limited to illustration. And scalability is where AI really starts to shine. We like to say whether you need 5 or 5,000 images, we have it covered. I use these as an example because this is a prompt that we developed as tests for R&D for a project that I'll show you in a moment. But we got the prompt, it's prompted about 2 hours to create. We got it to the point where we knew we're always going to be inside this rustic English pub with wood furniture, and then essentially all we have to do is define a few variables, and then we can move around inside that environment by describing different camera angles and different food, and we're essentially doing an AI photo shoot inside of an abstract environment that's consistent. Now here's another example of exactly that, and this is pretty typical of the sort of stuff that we get asked for at Shutterstock Studios. In this case, we needed very finely branded content for a cosmetics company. They wanted elegant bathrooms, kitchens, and views of the Mediterranean with marble surfaces, but they presented a new challenge. And that challenge was they wanted an open space to be able to composite in 3D digital twins. The challenge here is, how do you get the AI to focus the camera on an empty space? You can't just ask the AI, give me an empty space, it's not going to understand that at all. So the method that I came up with is go into a lot of detail about the surface on which the object is going to be placed and put that at the beginning of the prompt. So in this case, this reflective marble. We can then take these backgrounds, and with the team at Shutterstock Studios, we can model out the 3D digital twins, and with the post-production team, we can composite that into the background. Now just think about this. Once you've taken the time to develop the prompt, you can reliably create branded content and place objects in. We can roll this out very, very quickly at a very high scale. Again, scalability is huge. Here's another example. This is a shot that we did for a detergent company, and here we worked very closely with their art director to come up with these consistent types of environments. And again, we defined some variables so that you can get the colors and types of furniture or appliances in the background. And one thing that the art director was really big on is this soft edges to the shadows, and that took probably the longest time to figure out in the prompt, but we got there in the end. And then once we have the prompt, we can just keep rolling out, and provide like hundreds of images in a contact sheet that the client can choose from, and then we go into production with that. Here's some more examples again of, this is for a cosmetics company that again wanted to place 3D digital twins. And so what we did was we described the areas that they would be in, and we built this again just using a traditional design process, building this, prompting this from the bottom up. There's no custom image training, no custom model, nothing. This is done purely by prompt engineers designing this from the bottom up, and we were able to match both their summer and winter branding, even down to the gold trim on the boxes. Now, one of the great advantages of working with Shutterstock is that we have multiple models feeding into our generator platform. We have partnerships with NVIDIA, Google, OpenAI, and Amazon, and because they've all been trained on our content, we know that it's not scraped from the internet, we know that it's safe, it's not research data that's now been sold, so that we can commercially indemnify and license out the images that are generated on this platform. And the major advantage of having multiple models is you get different types of aesthetics, you get different types of looks and feels. This is a demo I was doing for a running shoe company. I didn't mention anything about gender, ethnicity, age, anything like that. I just said, give me people who are sweating after running. This is what we got. And you can see, because of the different models, we're ranging from very photoreal to quite heavily stylized, to so heavily stylized that it's an illustration. There's no right or wrong to this. It really comes down to a matter of taste and aesthetic, or perhaps what you or your client's branding is asking for. Here's an example you can try for yourself on our platform. This is the prompt that I put in, and this is what the different models came out. And you can see that it ranges from very heavily stylized all the way to quite a minimal look. And again, it's really not, there's no right or wrong to this. It depends on the aesthetic that you're looking for. I think in this case, I probably prefer these really heavily stylized versions on the left. Here's another one that you can try. And again, this is the same prompt and the different models responding to that prompt. And in this case, I think I actually prefer the more photoreal images on the right. This is a little over-stylized for my taste. Now, this is one that I find really exciting. This is a model we have in test, and the reason I love this one is because it bakes in a certain amount of film grain, digital noise, lens distortion, chromatic aberration, all the things that the human eye is used to seeing in a photograph or from a camera, but when they're missing, it looks too plastic, it looks a little bit uncanny, which is a big problem when it comes to AI. So I love this. And now we can actually zoom in a little bit and take a look. I don't know if it's really coming across on the screen, but you can kind of see the grain and the distortion in here. And this is exactly the sort of thing that, from the VFX work that I've done, that you're trying to apply to the material that comes from the 3D teams. You want to make it a little bit dirty, a little bit imperfect, to get rid of that uncanny feeling. This is pretty typical of the kind of stuff that I do. This photograph came from an airline. And they wanted to have a series of different shots around the world, and they wanted to know if we could recreate that with AI. So part of what my job is to see if we can do it with our models. So all of these images here were made with our different models, with our generative AI models, and this is the prompt that I ended up getting them with. As you can see, it's very long, it's very detailed, and the longer the prompt, the less wiggle room you give to the AI. The longer the prompt, the less the AI is going to try and fill the gaps. That's why the prompt is so long, and because the prompt is so long, you get these consistent results. And what I was really going for is the gold light through the hair. I wanted the kind of haze in the background, the Mediterranean background. And if you look very closely, the slight differences between, you can see the differences between the models. Some are a little bit softer, a little bit more glossy, some are a little bit crisper, a little bit more photoreal. And you have the different models to choose from when you're working on our platform. Now, to get into workflow things a little bit, because I've been using AI for a few years now, I've become comfortable with essentially outsourcing a lot of my ideas to AI. If you're working any sort of design, let's say you're in Photoshop and you accidentally change a font, that font might give you a whole different look and feel and inspire you to go in a different direction. If you're working in 3D, you might accidentally move a light or change its temperature, and again, that might inspire you to go in a different way. And we like to call those happy accidents. And if you're lucky, that might happen once or twice a day if you're a designer. With AI, this happens all the time, and I love it. I use this as an example because I was doing a demo for a cosmetics company, and I was going for this image in the bottom middle, and that's what I got what I wanted. But one of the things that came out from the AI that I wasn't expecting was this in the bottom left, and I actually preferred the angle that the AI was going at. I was like, hold on a second, I actually prefer that idea. So I took that prompt and developed it and ended up with these images here, and I think my favorite is probably the one in the center there. This just never would have happened before AI, so it's really supercharging my design process, which I absolutely love. Here's an example of this. This is for a fabric company that wanted a prompt, which we templated out for them in the way that I showed you before, where they wanted to be able to just try out different colors and different patterns, and you can generate these until the end of time. And just by changing the color or the pattern, you can just keep ideating and getting different type of ideas that perhaps a human never would have had. So AI is superpowering design here. Another way in which it's completely changed my process is storyboarding, and because I come from a video background, it's a huge part of what I do, and I'll be honest, I never enjoyed it, and people find that kind of weird when I say that. The truth about this is because inevitably we'd come up with a concept, we'd pass it over to the client, we'd lock in the storyboard, we go into production, but then when I'm in production I get my best ideas because I'm in the zone, I'm in the flow, and we can never really use those ideas because we've already got the storyboard is locked. So often I take those ideas, put them in my back pocket, and then try to use it for a future project. But now with AI, we can ideate, we can art direct, we can storyboard, and we can do it all in one flow, in one sort of session. And in fact, the quality of the storyboards and the style frames that we're able to deliver are much higher than what clients are traditionally used to. Everything you see here are sections from storyboards that we developed, but I thought I'd show you a real one. So this is for a supplements company. Here we open with the sun shining through the leaves, and you can see the sort of particles hanging in the air. The wind starts to pick up, the leaves start to come off the trees. Something's forming, some leaves are going in front of the camera out of focus. The camera punches in to see what it is, and you see it starting to form some sort of abstract clump. That becomes clearer that it's a ball of leaves. It explodes into a shrub, the camera pulls back, and then we've got a spot for the product to be placed. Now, the fact that all of this is consistent lighting, consistent colors, a consistent environment is because we took the time to develop the prompt, as you saw earlier, and template it out, that we're confident that we can now move around within this environment and then deliver this for the client. We can then run this through some third-party tools and come up with some very high-quality previs or a little animatics. We would never use these in production, but these give us an idea of whether or not our shots are going to work. And all of this was done within one day. And if you've ever worked in video production, you know this kind of quality stuff to get back from like your 3D team as a proof of concept would take much longer than a single day, going from ideation all the way through. All right, so let's kick it up again. About 18 months ago, Shutterstock started working very closely with NVIDIA. And that's because NVIDIA has a very powerful Edify multimodal generation system. And Shutterstock 3 years ago purchased TurboSquid, which has millions of 3D models. And so together, we've trained our own foundation 3D model, if you see what I mean. And everything that you see here is generated with our 3D model. Now, one thing I should also point out is that everyone on the team that's working on this comes from a 3D production background. So from the very beginning, we understand all the hopes and dreams and hates and things we want to avoid that people who work in 3D production want and don't want. So from the very beginning, we knew that it has to be fast. We know that. If you're a designer, there's no point in waiting a long time to see what you're doing. So since last June, we've actually increased the speed of this by about 1,600 times. We're now able to deliver previews for your prompts in about 10 seconds per preview. So you can prompt and check, ideate, iterate around that, and then once you like it, you can commit it, and then the model and the UV maps and the material will all be generated within roughly around 2 minutes, which is ultra fast for this sort of thing. It's ethical. What's the point of doing any of this if you can't use it commercially? There's no point at all. There are many other platforms out there that have scraped data from the internet or used research data. We're not doing that at all. We're the leader in ethical AI-generated content for commercial use, and we've been doing that for a couple of years now on the 2D side, and we're applying the same principles on the 3D side. We know the complete source of our model, and it's ours, and we're paying our contributors for it. We're paying our 3D modelers for their data, so we're not cutting anyone out of the loop, which is really, really important. And then, perhaps most importantly, it's convenient. From the very beginning, we decided to go API-based. We understand that, especially in the 3D production, you don't want to have to change your pipeline. You don't want your starter, your artist, to have to learn any new software. You certainly don't want to have to keep going out, going to a website, coming back, or deal with dams. We're developing plugins for every single DCC, starting with Blender and Maya. We also have it for Discord, for everything. Because it's an API, it can even plug into your already existing environment. And everything that you generate will automatically be imported with the material, with the UV map, with everything in the model, directly into your scene. Now this is what I love, the design side of things. Now, about 5 years ago, Epic purchased Quixel. Some of you probably have used Quixel, and I was using Quixel quite a lot, but once they made it free to use in Unreal, I started recognizing the same types of rocks in a lot of my kids' video games. And I'm like, okay, this is pretty bad if you can recognize a rock, right? So, but with this process, you can just ideate brand new material all the time. And so one of the first things I did when I had access to it was that I started generating different types of rocks. And here, all I'm doing is taking the prompt and just adding a little bit, ideating, generating, and seeing what you can do. And because it's ultra-fast previews, you can see the results you're going to get and just keep generating assets for your video game scene, your background, for your film production, whatever it is. So let's get into how the prompt works a little bit. Part of what I love about AI is, though, even though we're making it, we still have to discover how it works. It's a really fascinating thing about AI. So what I've really found over about the last 6 months that works best is a system of subject, detail, style as the prompt. So I like to open with what the object is, and then the bulk of the prompt is describing details, like what shape is it, what sort of patterns, what type of materials, what sort of colors. And then what I find works best is if you close with a short sentence about style, describing its elegance or its age or something like that. That really helps. What I found is that the optimal prompt length is roughly between 35-ish to 50-ish words. And again, the reason for that is anything below around that length, if you have very short prompts, you're leaving too much wiggle room to the AI. It's going to make you something, but you're not really controlling what it is. When you start going over 50, and I've tested prompts where a lot right up to 500 words, you start getting diminishing returns. So it's about how much energy do I want to put into this to the type of results that I get. One of the things I love about the platform is that we have seeding, and if you've used seeding on other platforms, you know that means once you have a prompt developed, you can just change the seed and get slight variations on that until you find something that you really, really like. It also means you can, if you keep your prompt and keep your seed, you can come back and generate the exact same object again if you need to, because it's seeded. And now, quite recently, in the last couple of weeks, we've rolled out prompt upsampling. Now, if you're not a super nerd like me and you don't really want to develop these prompts, you can put in a very short prompt and it will essentially enrich it under the hood and give you a lot more detail to it. And that's what you see going on with these shoes here. We have a very short prompt, but the enrichment is adding a lot of detail to it for you. This is particularly useful if you're concepting, prototyping, until you hit on something. When you download the model, you can see what the upsampling was, so then you can then feed that back in to get consistent sort of results. And here's a real world example of exactly what I'm talking about. So this is following the protocol of the prompt. We start off with the object, and then we go into a bit of detail about what it is, and then we like to end with just a little bit of something describing the modern elegance, Scandinavian charm. It's kind of quite a creative writing, but it really helps. It really makes a difference. These are the previews that I got for it, and each one of these took about 10 seconds. It started off by giving me this, and I didn't really like this open back, so I just kept changing the seed 5 or 6 times until I got this, and I was like, all right, I like this one. I committed to it, and then it imported directly into my scene like this. So this background loft I took from TurboSquid. I just opened it up, and then I just started generating couches, and they came in really fast. And these are the couches I made. I made all this in just one afternoon. I actually made a lot more, but I like these the best. I put them in. So just if you stop and think for a minute just how powerful this is. Obviously it doesn't have to be for interior scenes like this, but if it was, if you're a realtor that wants to do staging, or you're a company like that, or if you want to build props or just design anything, super, super powerful, super fast. And it's really fun at ideating. I love pushing AI models to see what they can do. So in this case, I was like, make me the craziest sorts. So I actually opened up a GPT and trained it myself to like give me some like really weird type of weapon prompts. And this is the ones it gave me. And so I just kept hitting the seed until I found one that I liked, and then I generated it, and this is what I got. Now I like to push things, so I manually went in and added an emission channel. It was super easy because we have the material. So you can see, like, again, this is something I wouldn't have come up with, right? The AI came up with it for me, but I loved it. And again, if you're working, say, for example, video game production or something, you can then take these prompts that are templated out and then create consistent art-directed assets for your scene. I did all this in one afternoon. And everything here is generated by our generator, other than the floor and the wall, which are just literally just 2 flat planes at 90-degree angles to each other with a repeating material that has color and displacement information in it. And that's all it is. Even down to the fire that you see here was generated with our generator. It also does people, and I've tested it pretty much every single way, but it's not perfect yet. So if you look at the face, it's a little bit nightmare fuel, it's a little bit off, and sometimes the materials that are generated do need some cleanup. I use either Photoshop or Substance Painter. I go in very briefly, clean up, typically 5 or 10 minutes. Sometimes you don't need any at all. And again, we're following the same type of prompt formatting that you see here. And again, I just developed using a GPT. I just made a ton of different types of people, and these are the ones that you see here. And I did a little bit of research about this event, where it will be. So I found an environment that looks similar. Oh, actually, one thing I should point out. The faces, this is where we've come in a year. So this is where we were a year ago and to where we are now for the same prompt asking for a private jet. So you can see we're going to solve the faces really, really quickly. But back to my original point about this hall. So I looked up what it was going to look like, and I decided I'm just going to generate tons and tons of different people. I started off pretty conservatively. This is our friend down here. I started off with just hands and pockets. Then I wanted to see, well, can they be having conversations? Yep. I was like, can they be sitting and having conversations? Yep. Can they be on a laptop? Yep. Can they be walking? Can they be walking and talking? Cell phone? I was like, what if they start getting hungry? Let's make some food. And like, oh, then people need to be eating. So I had people eating and talking. And again, it will pose any pose you want, give it any clothing you want, any type of person that you want. It does some things very, very well. Because there's a lot of human biology in the TurboSquid library, it does them really, really well. And again, if you look at these prompts, you can see it's very templated, right? You can see that I've used essentially the same prompt. I'm just changing a few words here or there to generate differently. And each one of these took a few seeds, I changed them, I got these kind of results. Now, if you just put in human lungs or human brain, you're going to get a much more cartoony, blobby type of thing. So the more detail that you give to the AI, the more detail you're going to get out of it. It's essentially what I'm getting at. But this is where things get really, really crazy, okay? It also does image to 3D. So I've shown you how I develop templates on the 2D side of things, where you can template out that stuff and then feed it into the 3D generator. This way you can ensure that you're going to have a very consistent art-directed style for your 3D assets. And this is exactly what I did here. This fantasy shield I made on the Shutterstock 2D generator, and then I fed it into our system. What's really, really interesting, and we didn't even know this ourselves until like maybe 3 weeks ago, it's initially what this gave us was this front of the shield and this back. Now this back is not really useful unless the shield is going to be in a wall or whatever, fine. But I needed a back to the shield, and so what I discovered was you could augment the prompt to solve that. So if you look at the end of the prompt, I put metal studs and a handle on the back is covered in wood, and then after a few C changes, this is what I got. And then that's the model that I committed to. Now, if you think back to what I was talking about on the 2D side, I've taken the time to template out the aesthetic and art direct, and so I know that when I'm feeding into the 3D generator, it's going to be a consistent art directed look and feel, which obviously is really important if you're developing something. These are all examples of image to 3D. This is the image that I fed into it as part of the same process, and this has had absolutely zero touch-up whatsoever. This is how the material came out and the model. And this is with the preview that I got from it in the bottom right there. And again, each one of these previews took about 10 seconds each. This model took about 2.5 minutes to generate. However, when I was first doing it, it wasn't quite round and it was missing a little bit of metal on the back. So using the technique I discovered with the shield, I just added these 5 words at the end: rounded shape made of metal. That solved that after a few C changes. This is what I got. Again, just think about how fast this is compared to traditional production techniques. Up here, I wanted to see whether or not it could handle sketches, so I did a quick sketch of a sci-fi pistol. Yep, it totally understood what I wanted from it. I tried painted doorways, I tried different types of crates, I did the statue, and then I really wanted to push it. I want to see, can you do like bombed out buildings? And this is the result that I got. Now, this is not perfect for a camera focusing on it, but I'm sure you can imagine in a movie shot or a video game, background slightly out of focus, smoke, debris, absolutely usable in production. So how does it work? So by now everybody's pretty used to prompting, and I've showed you that you can add an image. So let's do a blue 2-seat lounger, and this is what I'm feeding in, and this is the prompt that I put in. Once you submit it, the AI essentially extracts it from the background. This is quite an easy one, but it can do a much more complex material if it knows what it's looking at. And then it'll generate you the previews here. And so again, this comes in 10 seconds each, so roughly around 30-40 seconds is what you'll get back. And then once you're ready and commit to it, the model will come in whatever format that you've chosen, and it'll import directly into your scene, which is absolutely amazing. Now, you're probably wondering, like, what about the meshes? Well, they're super high quality and you have complete control over them. You can choose whether you want quad or triangle faces. You can say how many polygons that you want. You have full, if you don't like it, you can remesh it in different ways. And then the best part is you can import it in whatever format your production pipeline is working in. Now, you can see it can do everything from organic shapes, hard surface, combination, soft body, or if you need very high level of detailed triangles, it'll do that too. It'll do anything that you want, essentially. But you're probably wondering now, what about edge loops? What about creases? Well, it does that really, really nicely too. Look at these really nice quads, look at those really nice edge loops. And probably the next question you have is, that's great, that's cool, but can it deform? Yes, it can, really, really well. So for this, all I did was I prompted out a crash test dummy in a T-pose. I literally just threw it up on Mixamo and just chose like a few different cycles, boxing, drunk walk. These meshes are pretty dense, they don't have to be that dense. I was just doing it quickly. These are 10K meshes, but you can take it right down, as you can see, super, super clean. And we got the materials to match. So it produces high quality PBR textures with the options all the way up to 4K, and it automatically UV maps with really clean seams, and again, imported directly into your software. And if you want to take a little bit of a closer look, you can see the UVs, roughness maps, everything all generated automatically within about 2.5 minutes directly into your already existing pipeline. And here we can take a look at what it spits out. So this is a magnification of this area here. I just want to give you an idea of the kind of material that it is. Now, I don't know if you can see this flickering back and forth, but this is a little bit of cleanup that I had to do. There's a little bit of noise in it. I opened up. In this case, I didn't have to go into Substance Painter. I just opened it up in Photoshop, use the clone tool, clean it up. Obviously, you don't have to do it if it's underneath. It's just if the camera's going to see it. Sometimes there's a little bit of stuff that has to be done like that. Now, if all of that wasn't enough, it also does text and image to HDRI. And we're not talking about just background image, we're talking about true floating point light data. So if you choose to go up to all the way up to 16K, which you can do, with all the lighting data, you get really big files, like 2.5 gig files, which serve to be really, really nice, beautiful backgrounds and lighting for your scene. These are some of my favorites that we chose out, so I'll go through some of these briefly. This is a nice desert canyon, and this is the prompt that I use. And you can see, again, using the very similar type of prompt formatting that I showed you before that get you the really nice results. Ocean, things like that. This one actually came from an image. The original image was this little section here. It extrapolated from that with the prompt, it generated the rest. And again, full, true 360 floating point data, giant 16, and this one's really nice too. Really beautiful clouds, and again, this one is from an image also. Now, you're probably wondering about, let's see the light data. This next GIF is only 256 colors. It doesn't really do it justice, obviously, but all I did here was I opened this up in Lightroom, just changed up the exposure so you can see that it's going through everything. I really feel that we're right on the edge of a whole new way of production at the moment, and it's really, really exciting. You've probably seen a lot of it here, and I'm very confident that the 3D generator is going to be a large part of that, because the speed at which you can produce objects, art direct them, bring them in directly into your pipeline without disrupting anything. Thank you very much. My name is Alex. I'd be really happy to take any questions.